Have we been playing Valorant the wrong way? When Valorant was first announced and the trailers and teasers came out, the most common comment of the game is it being a Counter-Strike meets Overwatch. It had this idea of having the tactical gameplay of CS and the unique characters and diverse abilities of Overwatch. But as people got to first play it during the beta, people realized that the only thing Overwatch liked about it was the agents and utilities. All the gameplay resembled CS the most. But is it fair to say it is a CS clone? Is it right to play the game from the perspective of as if you were playing CS? Let's take a look at two games that have clashed, sparked arguments at times between the fanbase, and have always been compared to one another when we talk about the MOBA genre. League of Legends and Dota 2. I've played both games with a decent amount of hours, around 600 plus hours on each game. When I play each game, I've never really thought of how I play Dota with the League mindset, and vice versa. Playing League with how League is played and Dota as Dota. In Valorant, you'll hear casters or people say, this team likes to play with the CS style of play. Any team that plays hyper-aggressively that seems to have no strategy behind it gets called puggy. But is it puggy because we see it in the lens of a CS gameplay and strategy point of view? You don't really hear people that watch League say, oh, that was a very Dota move. Both games have fundamentals that translate within both games. Learning how to last hit and manage the minion wave, the importance of vision management on the map, and many more. And these concepts, or at least some, can be seen in every other MOBA game. It's these fundamentals, these ideas that make it a MOBA. But it's only until there. The how and why it's done is going to serve a different purpose in each game. Dota allows you to deny your minions. You can aggro neutral creeps near your wave to pull them out to maintain control of your lane. In League, objectives are a big factor in the game, such as Drake, Herald, and Baron control, so having your minions situated in a certain area of the lane can help in fighting for these objectives. The same base concept and fundamentals, but are treated and thought of differently in each game. Before we head on with the question of how to play Valorant, let's first take a look at the games it has been compared with. Beginning with Overwatch. In the game, each hero has their own unique abilities and weapons, designed in a way for the character to fulfill their role. These roles are tank, DPS, and support. The role of a hero dictates how they are generally played. The tank takes up most of the damage, trying to gain space and protecting the team, usually having some kind of shield or an ability that allows them to sustain themselves. DPS are the main damage dealers, trying to pick off the enemy team and create a numbers advantage. And lastly, support, that try to keep that numbers advantage by healing the team and trying to keep them alive. However, the specific abilities of a hero dictates how they can play. An example would be Zenyatta. His role may be support, but his other ability debuffs enemies by multiplying the damage taken. Hence, he may play more aggressively by trying to pick off enemies, unlike Mercy, who can't shoot and heal at the same time like Zen. Also, no two heroes really work the same, and if there are details that make them work differently. Like supports Lucio and Brigitte both have AoE healing, but Brig relies on dealing damage to activate the healing aura, unlike Lucio. Abilities are not capped by a charge, but by cooldown. This means abilities can be spammed throughout the battle when available, except for the ultimate ability, which has to be charged by dealing damage, healing, and naturally increasing over time. Because each agent is unique, it is important to have a team composition that synergizes well. Each team comp will have certain win conditions and different levels of success depending on the map and based on the opposing team composition, as well as there's an idea of hero counters. If you would like to see how such strategizing works, a great video would be this video on the Dive Meta by Action Esports. Now moving on to the maps. A map is played with a specific game mode tied to it. We will be focusing on a map and game mode where there is a clear distinction of an attacking side and defending side. The map to be used as an example will be Temple of Anubis, which is an assault map. The objective for this game mode is for the attacking team to take 2 capture points, while the defending team attempts to prevent them until the time runs out. The map has a clear main pathway towards a choke point and capture point. A choke point is an area where the attacking team meets resistance from the defending team. However, due to the map design and nature of hero abilities, a clash can happen at any part of the map, and not necessarily on the most obvious choke points. The players are also not limited to the designated main pathways as to make the most of the hero abilities, especially for those with mobility abilities meant for area battles, taking high ground, and flank and diving engagements. Pair that with alternate routes towards the objective, leads to a multitude of team composition and strategies. Though, to someone who does not actively follow or watch Overwatch, everything would seem too chaotic, but there is a level of order and coordination that is going on. Now we look at Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Utility is no longer tied to a character, allowing anyone in the team to buy any of the many grenades available from smokes, molotovs, flashbangs, decoys, and HE grenades. But a player can only buy a certain amount of nades, and given that they have the economy to do so. Gameplay is also significantly slowed down, from the consistent battles that go on in Overwatch to a more tactically steady flow where teams fight for information and space. This duel for info and space is even more punishing as death means you are gone for the whole round. Though an interesting thought with regards to player spawns is the thought of spawn timings. Every player respawns in a random spot at their own spawn point. At this area, players are unable to move while they buy their guns, armor, and utility, but as soon as the round starts, it's a race between the CT and the T side. The CT side runs to the sites to set up their defenses or aggressively peek and hold a choke point to catch any T players pushing up. The T side moves toward any of the main pathways till they meet possible CT players on the choke points. To add some strategic depth for the T side, maps usually have connecting pathways that allow players to move from one main pathway to another, like on Mirage with the underpass that connects B to mid, which in turn allows players to move into A side. With 1 minute and 55 seconds in a round, connecting pathways and practice lineups for utility, it allows the T side to keep the CT side guessing on which side will be executed on. It also calls for the CT side to play smart and know when to push for info or trying to read or guess on the possible side that will get executed on. The large map design compared to Valorant is not an issue. As stated before, anyone can buy any of the many grenades. This allows teams to time when and where utility will be used in the round and have coordinated executes such as the standard smoke and molly execute on B site Inferno. Multiple smokes are thrown at the same time and mollies as well to increase the chances of the T side taking favorable fights against anyone stationed on site. When we take into consideration all that has been discussed, we can now clearly see how Valorant differs from the other two games. In Valorant, the utility is tied to an agent. It is limited to a certain amount of charges and the player's economy to buy said charges. However, there exist ultimate abilities that can turn the tide in a round or game, but it is only available if the player has reached the required ult points. This means two things. First is the scarcity of utility. The available utility for the team to use is dependent on the team composition. If a player is picked off, any abilities tied to that agent are no longer available, which is extremely costly if you only have one player with that specific utility, such as having only one controller for smokes in the team. Second is that the playstyle of the team is affected by the team comp. Just like in Overwatch, there is a win condition in how the team should play and coordinate with each other. Ways they can create scenarios for more advantageous fights, and planning out responses to the weaknesses of their team comp. And it's not just what type of utility is available, but also how it's designed. Yoru's flashes enables him to be a bit farther and more creative with how he can entry with his flashes, while Phoenix is limited to being close to the entry point or sightline he wishes to push. This adds more depth when it comes to making strategies and creating executes. The buy phase and map design also affects the gameplay. Players are able to move around during the buy phase unlike in CSGO. This allows defenders to set up on the sites and attackers to gather in areas they wish to push or take control of. What's stopping both teams from going beyond where they're supposed to are the barriers. These barriers are lifted once the round starts, and players are instantly exposed to the choke points. Most pathways towards the choke point are choke points themselves. I think this is why a round in Valorant is 1 minute 40 seconds as opposed to CSGO's 1 minute 55 seconds. The game has taken away the need to have spawn timings to travel from spawn point to the site or choke point. What we do now have are barrier timings and or holding advantages. Some maps have barriers placed in which defenders or attackers can already see the choke point. This is what I call holding advantage. An example would be B-long in Icebox for the defenders, or Market towards Hookah for the attackers on Bind. With barrier timings, it just means no one can see each other from the choke points just yet, but usually one side will have the faster timing. An example is A lobby and long barriers. The defenders can swing faster to see lobby than the attackers do. There's also no connecting pathways between main pathways or choke points. The only map with a semblance of such is Bind with the teleporters. Most rotations require teams to rotate from areas they initially have control of before the barrier is gone. With the choke points being already in front of the players, this reduces the need for executes to take control of such areas. A single molly or smoke is capable of stalling for time. There's less need for the teams to pour out resources for those pathways leading to site, unless they wish to have complete control over it, and in the attacker's case when they are leading up to the site execute. With the limited resources, why would any attackers waste most of their utility at the start of the round and before the site take, when it leaves them to push dry into site? Why would defenders use up most of their utility to stall when they can save it for the retake? With how generally the sites are smaller and have tighter corners, every piece of utility to take site, play post plant, and retake is very much needed. So with the puggy playstyle of hyper-aggressive pushes and use of utility, I think it makes use of the map and agent abilities quite intelligently when you might think of its purpose. The small map size and explosive executes at the start of the round for defenders, if successful, keeps the attackers stuck at their area before even reaching close to the site, and lowers the amount of utility available to them. Holding off angles in parts of the map that give you an advantage and possible escape routes allows you to lessen the amount of utility needed to get a pick. If the defender gets 2 picks and lives, that's great. If he dies, the result is still great due to the numbers advantage. Attackers try to explosively take the site as fast as possible. If they can pick off anyone holding on to the site and have utility to spare for the post plant, they have significantly increased their chances against the retake. Teams like FaZe Clan make use of these facts, but by no means am I saying that it's perfect nor polished. This playstyle is of high risk and high reward. I think Valorant is still at its infancy when it comes to how far players and teams can use and understand the agent ability usage, how they use the map, and overall strategizing and playstyle creation. So are we playing Valorant wrong? Unlike MOBAs, the fundamentals in FPS games, especially the concepts between CSGO and Valorant, are technically the same. Crosshair placement, how to peek, angle advantage, etc. But I think if we take a closer look at how best to make use of the map design and different agent synergies, someone, teams, or even the community will find new creative ways to play that we never thought of. For now, play how you think it should be played, but don't limit your view to previous game experiences. The great thing about new games and games with consistent updates is that something can arise anytime. I hope you guys liked this video. It was kind of a new take for me. Instead of doing the usual esports analysis, I wanted to take a look at game design and how I could try breaking down the game of Valorant from that point of view. Be sure to check out my previous videos or subscribe to be updated when I upload a new one. And once again, thanks for watching.